Cool. Ayanda, thanks for joining us on the stage.
Thanks for having me.
Just introduce yourself. Just tell us a little bit about the organization you represent.
Yeah, happy to do that. Good afternoon, I think it is now, everyone. My name is Ayanda Bam, and I'm one of the founders of Friends of Hemp South Africa. We're, in effect, a national coalition and alliance of interested parties who are at the forefront of leading the liberalization of hemp in South Africa, but also representing the African voice at the international stage. Friends of Hemp effectively does three things. On the one side, we support litigation and efforts to help expedite some of the legislative reforms we think are really important. The second thing is to do quite a lot of advocacy, supporting our legislators, put appropriate legislation that is also very South African specific to help enable the industry, and then finally engaging in these types of events to help raise some of the awareness and to be able to engage with a community, I think, who is all quite passionate about the development of cannabis for the country.
The hemp conversation at the moment is definitely flavor of the month. There's a lot of conversations going on about it. A lot of people have been excited about the potential of things coming online, but it's not all what it seems to be. Tell us about some of the frustrations or the barriers at the moment that you perceive in terms of the hemp industry.
Yeah, I mean, where to begin? I think the fundamental challenge we face in the hemp industry, I think, is one that's very similar to the challenge we face in general in the cannabis industry, which is that we have a Drugs Act, which is about half a century old, that was instituted at a time to be quite a punitive measure, but it has yielded absolutely no result whatsoever. We've seen this in South Africa, we've seen this pretty much everywhere else around the world, and the intransigence, I think, of the security cluster to unlock what to us is really a pretty simple change in the Drugs Act is potentially the most fundamental stumbling block across the industry, because it also limits opportunities to be able to get seed or to be able to get financing or to operate really and make a livelihood. So that's a really major challenge. But I think one of the unfortunate things about hemp is that while the mandate was technically given from the president to the Department of Agriculture to coordinate its development, I think the inheritance of the hemp mandate from the Department of Health was no less than really a catastrophe, because in effect they've accepted regulations from health that restrict applications for human or animal ingestion. It restricts the applications for CBD or the use of the inflorescence. It then has this arbitrary limit of THC that comes from a botanical study that's about as old as the initial Drugs Act, and it's entirely without scientific merit. And frankly, in South Africa, the feasibility of growing any kind of hemp here with these kinds of restrictions is technically zero. So those are some of the challenges we have. There are some efforts to try and liberalize this. We have the hemp permits coming on. Those will be too late.
Let's just, for those who don't know, let's just to discuss the process of hemp permits. So in October, they're supposed to be handing those out, but they have stated clearly they're looking at a 2-month process to process those. I think they said last time I heard they had a few hundred already in the pipeline. So we all know, no disrespect to government, we all know that they're not going to be the most administratively slick operation in terms of getting these things done, which essentially means we lose another season of growing or just get the tail end, which is extremely frustrating. How do you think we deal with that? How do you think we actually move this thing forward?
So, correct, very many challenges around the permitting process. We will definitely miss the season this year unless people are looking to grow for seed, and even then I'm not sure where they're getting their seed from, because there are a number of other things that need to happen to enable the permits. There is a little bit of sort of legislative acrobatics that the Department of Agriculture is playing. So they are trying to use the Plant Improvement Act to establish the regulations for managing or overseeing hemp as an agricultural commodity, which is really great. But that still has not been, it hasn't been passed what we understand is with the minister for approval, but it hasn't been gazetted to the public, so we don't even know what is actually included in it. The permitting situation also is unfortunately quite a big barrier at the moment, because what we understand about some of its provisions are that they're going to require folks to, yes, of course you have to pay for a permit, but you then also have to fence.
Under lock and key are the words they use.
Yeah, which is a really strange thing, and the committee that's established to issue the permits is going to be comprised of 7 different departments, and there's no consideration around how you localize this or do it through provincial structures. So I think one of the challenges is that the National Department of Agriculture is looking to do way too much than it actually has the capacity to execute on. So I think if we could have some revisions to the permits and the process, or some of the parameters they have around fencing, allowing to grow, that would be really fantastic. But until you actually change some of the other pieces of legislation that allows you to use the whole plant, it's still going to be a challenge. So that's the thing that really needs to be unlocked. And we're working quite closely with the legislators to try and change some of this. But as you know, the wheels of government move very, very slowly, and it's exceptionally frustrating in some cases.
Yeah, I think the good thing is, on a positive note, at least the wheels are finally turning. They just need to move quicker, without a doubt. Let's assuming that all those things get sorted and we can put plants in the ground, and how real, everybody's talking about hemp being a big opportunity. How real is that? Is it a big opportunity, or is it something we're just hanging on to? So let's explore that. Why is it a big opportunity for South Africa?
So for a couple of reasons, the single biggest reason why hemp is so important, especially for a country like ours, is that it offers us the opportunity to be able to have a massive multiplier effect through one single entry point. So you grow a plant, right, as a farmer, and we always talk about this idea of having to diversify our portfolios, right? That's important to be able to build resilience in case you get shocks, etc. Now, that kind of diversification is already built in the plant, because every single component of it can be used for different markets, so there isn't this dependence on using one part of the plant only, wasting the rest, and then hoping that there is actually a market for your product. So that is a huge opportunity, and in the case of South Africa, we're not talking about this. It isn't conjecture around these sort of big valuations that you see in sort of sexy cannabis. What we're talking about is huge applications for lots of farmers whose livelihoods have frankly been decimated pre-COVID and don't see very much of a prospect post-COVID, and who want to be able to grow a crop that isn't too intensive on the soil, because we have an issue around soil fertility here, that doesn't require large amounts of water. We're a water-stressed country. That also allows them to be able to convert the stuff, use it for feed, into crop, to fix nitrogen into soil, to regenerate, for clothing, for applications in automotives. Now, the opportunities we see are not in 5 or 6 years' time. I'll give you a simple example. The automotive industry is a really important one in South Africa, particularly for the Eastern Cape province. You have tier 1 through 4 suppliers into the automotives who are importing hemp mats and are not even compounding them in any sort of meaningful way, are simply assembling them, putting them into molds, and then supplying the automotive industry. That already happens. There is already a demand for the product. Why should we not be able to import substitute? Why should it be that if the South African wants to grow it, they're a drug dealer, but we can simply import it and compound it here?
Yeah, I was at Tony Budden's warehouse the other day, the Emporium, and he was showing us all the fabric and everything they make, and all the fabric was imported. This is like material that has to be imported. It's just it's absolutely crazy. But so there's the industrial side, okay, in that sense. But one of the things that people keep talking about is the fact that so we've got all the basic tools, the sunlight, the soil, the labor. So growing it is not necessarily an issue. But there are certain applications that require a lot of processing. Dehortication plants, we don't have any of that. I've heard about one dehortication plant plant in the country. So there's all this kind of energy looking at the farmers, but what are we doing to look at the industry and how to industrialize the hemp industry? Because there's only so many people that can make soaps and shampoos and hemp oil. How do we industrialize?
No, it's an excellent question, and unfortunately, we're doing absolutely zero as a country around that. And in large part, that's because if you have the mandate to be driven from the plant perspective by the Department of Agriculture, that's their mandate. That's what they understand. If you were having a conversation with the DTIC, it would be slightly different substantively because their focus is on actually facilitating the commercialization and the trade, the building of enterprises, etc. So there's quite a bit to do on that end, particularly around building the value chain. You're exactly right. The fiber viability is dependent on being able to have access to these technologies for which we don't have original equipment manufacturers in South Africa. But something like a decortication machinery, this isn't a 4IR. It's actually stuff that could be quite easily fabricated, and you could do some interesting backward engineering, which is some work that we're trying to do here locally. So that certainly has to be a major investment. The other investment has to be in the genetics. At the moment, we've got 2 local genetics, but those are foundation seed. The foundation seed has not been certified, nor has it been multiplied. So you can have the seed, but then what are you distributing to people to grow if you haven't multiplied? So some of those challenges are really, really fundamental. So I think the genetics one on the processing side, particularly on the fiber, we have actually quite a bit to do. If you're looking at, for example, pressed hemp seed oil, there actually is quite a lot of that technology already available for other types of grains, right? So the application there is immediate. And I mean, we see products on South African shelves that are hemp-derived or hemp-based, and there are tons of them, and they're flooding markets increasingly. So we think the opportunity to capture on that by simply allowing and enabling some easy technologies to be used that are already in the market, I think we can really rapidly accelerate the development.
So build that market. We've got to build
yes.
Build that demand. We've got to build that market and build that demand. You know, we've got to let the general public understand that they're buying hemp powder. It's nutrition. It's not buying like cannabis that's going to get you high. There's still quite a lot of work to do in that space. I'm just ending off pace and time. We're continually talking about the fact that we are losing traction. We are losing the opportunity. Offtake agreements are you know, at some point might be a thing of the past as other countries put protective measures in place. What steps do we need to take here urgently and now to make sure that we don't lose any more traction?
First of all, I would encourage folks to support the Friends of Hemp initiative that is looking to basically put forward a declaratory order. So this is litigation. It's sad to say that despite wanting to work very collaboratively with government, the only way that you actually capitalize on the opportunity and make sure we don't lose any time is unfortunately through our courts. It's an unfortunate fact of life, and I think there is some sense on the part of the government that they themselves feel the only way that they can move faster themselves is if they have some judicial authority that commends them to actually do that. So I would say plain and simply support the Friends of Hemp initiative. We invite supporters from every aspect of the economy. We need to be able to make sure that the laws can be unlocked today. If we wait through the legislative process, we'll be here in 2025 having the same conversation. And in the case of hemp, you know, unlike, for example, recreational cannabis or medicinal cannabis, we've been growing hemp in South Africa since 1995. So you know, it's already been too long, and lots of people have raised expectations. And frankly, if we don't really coalesce, I think as sort of one kind of movement, we're not going to really get anywhere. I think the other thing that's important to say, especially because this is largely an environment around the recreational cannabis space, which we are also very big supporters of from the Friends of Hemp. We are not supporting hemp at the expense of any other segment. We think there can actually be some coexistence. And very critically on that point is that I think we as an industry look very fragmented, and we look like we don't have our own house in order. And so it's very difficult when you are a government that's inundated with all of these various problems. Everybody's clamoring for some kind of legitimacy. You have 20 million people, everybody's telling you do this, do that. It's quite a difficult thing to do. We also have a very low knowledge base, for example. We ourselves, from different segments of the economy, need to be unified. And that's the only way that we have enough force to be able to get the government to move faster than they are at the moment. And I'm afraid that if we don't do that, we're going to be having a lot of these discussions, which are very frustrating for us. But for other people, you know, these are bread and butter issues. People can't wait. We don't have that luxury.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Cannabis is now a bread and butter issue. It's like people need to survive. You know, we have a massive illicit market that is growing from edibles to oils because people are hungry. Try telling someone to stop selling their edibles when they're using it to put food on the table. So I think you're right. I think unity and working together is something that we're not doing enough of. So I really commend what you're doing and pushing forward, and let's just leave it at that. You know, let's work together, but let's also we need to be more outspoken as an industry. We need to collaborate, and we need to push harder. We need to push harder and partner with government to make sure it comes online. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks Ayanda Bam from Friends of Hemp. Let's give him a round of applause.